Had a bit of an involuntary hiatus for the last maybe 2 months because of illness and Christmas and snow, and I've spent most of that time working. So I thought I'd read this first little poem that kind of explains exactly how that made me feel, and it's called Written During a 9 PM shift on a Deserted Cheese Counter. Watching time trickle past like mud through your fingers, recognising nothing in blank eyes, blank voices, blank minds that are carried by like flotsam. Longing for some spark, some flare, words to be spoken, read and heard, that ignite the half-forgotten and send the mind whirling in flame like a lover's touch sets skin alight. Normality is anaesthetic to the soul. Thank you. And this is the Terrified Children one. I was dared by my mother to write a children's story. And I know a few of you probably know I write quite weird, dark, creepy stuff, so it was a bit of a change. And this piece is called Do Not Disturb. Every child in the village knew about the house. It sat alone at the end of its street. It had never been lived in, not any of the adults could even remember anyone ever living there. The windows were boarded up. The paint on the front door was chipped and faded. And it was haunted. A witch lived there once. She was locked up for cooking and killing children for her dinner. Sometimes you could still hear the children late at night. No, it was an axe murderer. It was a psychopath who ran through the village. No, it was his victim, a little girl who was scared of the dark. Someone's brother had seen the lights flickering behind the newspaper in the attic window. It didn't matter what story was being passed around. One by one, on the way home from school or in the long summer holidays when riding their bikes had become boring, the children would dare each other. Go knock on the door. Bet you won't. Bet you won't stand there and knock for a whole minute. So one by one, they found themselves there, the sun glaring in their eyes as they looked up at the house. They'd creep slowly up the path, past the overgrown weeds and the rubbish in the garden. The sweat trickling down their necks, they'd look up at the huge wooden door and they'd flail wildly against the door, the sound echoing throughout the house, and they'd run back down the path, laughing even as they screamed, not even looking back, not even once. Time passes. Summer leaves, winter comes, and children grow up. Some became rich, some became famous, some went on to have large, happy families. Some didn't do very much of anything at all. And yet, as the years passed, one by one, they'd find themselves there, the snow flying in their eyes as they looked up at the house. They'd slowly walk up the path, past the ice and the snow that blanketed the garden, the cold wind blasting down their necks. They'd look up at the huge wooden door that always seemed as huge as it always had, and the door would swing open, and in they'd step. The hallway was so long and so dark, all they could see was a tiny candle light flickering at the end in the farthest room. And they'd walk slowly down that corridor, that long, dark corridor, and in that room they would find a feast. Meats and breads and cheese and cakes and chocolate, making a smell like they'd never smelled before, and a roaring, crackling fire that lit up the room, and soft, soft chairs. And they'd be so tired and so surprised and so cold and so terribly hungry that back down that dark, dark corridor, they wouldn't hear the door quietly close and the lock click into place. All the children in the village knew about the house. It sat alone at the end of the street. It had never been lived in. The windows were boarded up, and the paint on the front door was chipped and faded. And it was haunted. Thank you very much.